What's up, and welcome to another episode of Grind Line Podcast. I'm your host, Greg. You're listening to episode 227. We do have a mailbag tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup Final matchup. Henrik Zetterberg was inducted into the IHF Hockey Hall of Fame, but I am here with Ryan and Tyler. And I mean, it's like a fucking miracle when the three of us get on at the same time. And Ryan apparently does the Owen Wilson wow at the beginning of every single episode now, because last episode it was because we were at 226 and I said 226. You're like, wow. Yeah.
Oh, shit. I do that a lot, don't I?
And tonight we have Tyler, which is an even bigger wow. He figured out
that's what got the wow.
He figured out that if he works out in the morning that he has free time in the evening, and that's just a revelation for him. But Tyler, I'll start with you. How are you? Being on the podcast, guest appearance.
Guest appearance. No, I'm back. I'm glad to be back. Been a little while since I've actually talked about the Wings. Not that there's a whole lot to talk about in terms of the Wings, but there's a lot to talk about hockey wise, and certainly the whole Joe Veleno thing I'd like to speak on, because I don't really know what to think.
Like 2 weeks ago. We're past these things. That was the past, Tyler.
But okay, Ryan. But you know what? Like, I mean, the more we get deeper to the summer, the more that we'll have to talk about in terms of the Wings.
Just watched the cop drive by my house, so I'm intrigued where he went just now. But other than that,
Crime Watch Ryan.
Yeah,
I just had a attractive woman jog by my house.
That's a better scenario that you're in right now than me. Than
I would
say the hoodlums of Canton, apparently.
Oh, Lord.
Canton. There's no hoodlums in Canton, please.
No, there's. I don't know what's going on. I want to see where he went, but I can't walk outside because then it'll just be blank chair that I don't think anyone wants to see. But anyways, I'm good. I know that we have a lot to talk about. I don't really have many things to update other than my beer tastes really good. So let's keep going.
Fantastic. Well, we do have a Stanley Cup Final matchup. It is the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Florida Panthers. I don't think many people saw Florida getting to the finals. I definitely thought Carolina was going to take them out. That was sorely mistaken, apparently. Vegas has a strong team, man, and I had Vegas in the finals, and they're in the finals. So half of my bracket was actually, I think that half besides Seattle was perfect on that part of my bracket, and the right side, Florida fucked all that up. But I love the matchup. And what they say about matchups like this, and I agree with it, is that matchups, especially finals and championships in non-traditional markets, help grow the sport, which is true. And they both have a hell of a team. Florida won the President's Trophy last season. Vegas has been on a tear basically since they got into the league, and they're making it to the finals in their first 6 seasons in the league, which is phenomenal. And I think it's great. And it works when it works. And as we've seen with the Coyotes, it doesn't work when it doesn't work. And I think a lot of that has to do with ownership, how they build a team, the money they're willing to spend. And they've got good owners in Vegas. They've got a phenomenal atmosphere. They've got a great location.
Great management team in general, other than just the ownership.
Exactly. And I like the matchup. And a lot of people will say they don't like the matchup, and that's fine. And
why? Because it's not an original 16 versus an original 16?
Yeah. So
I think that's a lot of the complaints right now.
On Facebook, disclaimer, someone had put, if Florida and Vegas make it to the finals, I am never watching this sport again. And I said, why? Because 2 teams that deserve to be there are making it to the finals. And they're like, they're not hockey cities. But they've got hockey. They've got hockey, and they're winning games, and they're good teams, and they're made well, and they're coached well, and the players bought in, and the fans have been fantastic. It's the most fans I've seen at a Florida game in how long? Like, it's getting good. And if this is something that turns you off of the game, I mean, there's a big issue there.
I mean, I think Florida's been shit on the last several years, because even last year when they were a President's Cup winning team, I think their attendance was pretty much laughable. And you could tell that there was frustration this season because they had a slow start. You can almost say it was kind of not quite as bad, but like the Blues, where they couldn't figure it out. The Blues, when they won the Cup, is what I'm referring to, is that Florida couldn't figure it out. Then things just seemed to click. Their stars became the stars that they should be. And as the season went on, the crowd picked up. And it wasn't just okay, the Red Wings are in town, it's going to be all Wings fans. Were there a lot there? Yes. but the Florida fans were starting to show up as that hype started to build. Now it's going to be, can they keep this up after this? Because it's been since 96 since they were in this position, and they lost to Colorado that year, if I remember correctly. So
swept by the Avalanche in 96.
Yeah. So this is huge for them. And then you look on the flip side of Vegas, to say that that's not a hockey city. I mean, at this point, I would beg to differ. I'd say that's one of the hottest hockey markets in the league right now, hands down. The way when you think of Vegas, that team epitomizes that. And the show that they put on for the pregame, they take everything that you have in Vegas, and it is a part of that team now. And it's incredible. Now, I'm not saying that what the Wings put on isn't great, but it doesn't touch what Vegas does. There is a legit excitement every game, pregame, during the game, because of the entertainment aspect that they bring from the Strip into the arena, and it's impressive.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. The matchup, I mean, is cool, but I'll tell you what, in terms of casual hockey fans or even people that don't watch hockey, no one's going to watch this Stanley Cup Final at like a high level. Like, the ratings are going to be really low, I think, because nationally, those teams
on what, TNT, right?
Yeah, those teams don't move the needle for people. The teams that move the needle for people are like Pittsburgh and Chicago and Detroit and, Edmonton, even, I think, would move the needle more than Vegas. I mean,
I think Vegas does. I think Vegas might move the needle more than Florida at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I don't think Florida moves the needle for anybody, honestly. If anything, at least Vegas is one of those teams, either you love them or you hate them. I'm on the side where I hate them, because I hate the fact that they just turn over their roster and they turn over their coaches like it's nothing. I can't stand that personally, but I can see why someone would like that. And, they're a newer team, so some people like them. Some people hate the fact that they got to the Stanley Cup Final their first year. Especially like teams of fans like Detroit or other teams that have struggled for a long time to get there. And then, Vegas kind of gets handed that. And yeah, they did a good job of managing what they had to do and everything. So did Seattle as well. But like I'm saying, like, I don't think those teams move the needle, but that's not the NHL's problem. This is where you're at with parity. You want parity, this is what you got. Two teams that really don't move the needle for people. But you know what? Hockey-wise, I think it's going to be a damn good series. I think you're going to get two really good teams. I think it goes 7, honestly.
I think you might be able to make the argument of Florida maybe not moving the needle for a national kind of fan base. But I think that Vegas absolutely can with, I mean, like Ryan said, with the experience in general, because of the pregame and because of what happens during intermissions and everything in Vegas and how they bring like the Vegas entertainment aspect to it. I think that's huge. I mean, it's going to be absolutely electric, and people are going to be pumped, and they've got two very tough teams. So if you're trying to bring people that are not hockey fans into hockey, and having Vegas in the final, I think, is an excellent way to do it, just because of just the kind of pageantry of the whole thing and what they do. I think Vegas is the perfect opportunity to just have someone who does not watch hockey, and especially having on TNT, Ryan, because the TNT broadcast is miles better than what the ESPN broadcast is.
They embarrass ESPN.
It's also going to be on TNT, True TV, and TBS.
Great.
They're putting it across their whole network.
More opportunities for people to watch, and that's
except
what you need.
For Game 5. Game 5.
That's weird. If it makes to Game 5,
there must be an NBA game on or something.
Could be.
Maybe Major League Baseball. I don't know.
If you put it in all those channels and you show that presentation to everyone, I mean, it's got to hook some people.
Nationally, I don't think it moves the needle, but I will say in terms of like in those markets, I mean, that's going to grow the game of hockey tremendously. I mean, obviously in Vegas, it's already kind of grown, but it's going to continue to grow. In Florida, I mean, if you know where that is, Sunrise is kind of far, kind of close to Miami, kind of close to Fort Lauderdale. There's not like a whole lot of hockey there, but I mean, the more that you win and the more that you put this team in front of people's faces, I mean, the more they can grow it. I mean, Kachuk's going to be there for a long time, so he could grow the game down there tremendously.
And the big thing with that, with you mentioning Kachuk, he's a Team USA. You're going to push that. We got a stud American in a potentially premier market is what they're pushing towards. I mean, I think a lot of people, even myself included, forgot that they were a President's Trophy winning team. Zito got aggressive, made the big trades and moves in the offseason to try to improve them. It didn't click or mesh for much of the season, but it meshed and clicked at the right time, which, as we've seen over the last several years in particular, that's all that matters. If you've got the right guys stepping up and your goaltending stepping up, you're good to go. But I think to find my last point I'll touch on, like for the market piece, though, I mean, Florida is Florida. I think for the casual hockey fan, they're still going to shit on them just because they're the Panthers and their attendance has always sucked. But Vegas has stood out, as I already mentioned from the get-go, because of the way they present themselves. But their original Twitter admin put them on the map even more so. And that really got the engagements up. It got people talking about them, and that's pretty much maintained. They haven't been as like offhand witty as at the start, but they still provide a sense of, hey, we're still new here. We're going to make you laugh, and we're also going to talk some shit. And we got a good hockey team to boot. So to me, the people that are pissed off saying they got handed a team, okay, well, these teams could have restricted who they had available to them. And George McPhee also had an incredible plan, and he has maintained that plan the last several years. And he's not afraid to completely upheave his roster because, as we all know, it's a business. Yes, there's going to be certain players that you're going to keep around for an extended period of time, but he's
still
got
to be smart.
You got to win, and this league is about winning. If you don't win, who gives a shit? Detroit's not winning. Everyone shits on him now.
I do remember Elliot Friedman going on 31 Thoughts, or at the time, I think it's 32 Thoughts now. And he was talking about how like a lot of players in the NHL don't trust what Vegas is doing. And in terms of like, they wouldn't want to go there because the fact that, you know, they don't know if they're going to be there the next year. Even if they sign a giant deal, they might not be there the next year. I mean, on one hand, you understand that. And on the other hand, it's like, if you're Vegas, too bad. Who cares?
I mean, your top players in Jack Eichel, no movement clause, signed for 3 more years at $10 million. Mark Stone's on a no move clause. Will Carlson, Wild Bill, modified no trade. Like, their top players they've locked down. So if you want to talk to the point of role players being afraid to go there, sure. But McPhee's going to make a move to bring somebody in anyways. So if you're not going to step up and go there, then somebody else is going to be more than willing to do that.
And that can happen with any team too. That's not just a Vegas thing. Like, you could get traded anywhere and then a year later be traded back out of town. That's not just a Vegas thing.
But there's a lot of players that they did that to, though.
So
get good or get out.
You're upset as a fan at the moment. You might be pissed off as a player, but their top players, and I didn't go to their defense. Pietrangelo, no move. Alec Martinez, modified no trade. Shea Theodore, modified no trade. Brady McNabb, modified no trade. Their top players all aren't going anywhere. You've got stability on that team.
That's going to make them age quickly, though, I think.
The problem is it took them a few years to figure out what was going to work. So they moved these players in and then failed fast. They figured out they weren't going to work and shipped them out, which is what they need to do. And then when they got the guys they knew were going to work, they locked them in. They gave them the no moves. They gave them the no trades. I think they are a more stable team now than they were in the past because they're just tooling to get to the finals, which they did, and to win a cup. So I don't think you're going to see a lot more of those huge ship a bunch of guys out kind of moves because their team works now. Their team is solid. They've got the pieces they need to stick around and push and make a win, which is what they're hoping to do.
As I said, a lot of those guys just mentioned, their contracts several guys are up next year. I mean, Eichel, Stone, and Carlson are all signed for at least 3 more years. Most of these contracts are after this next season. They're due for new ones, so to your point of Tyler, them getting too old. Several of these guys are going to be at that point of, all right, time to cut our losses and bring someone else in that's younger. So I don't think they're in a bad spot at all right now.
I think prospects wise, they definitely are. Trading Suzuki.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
trading a lot of their guys away. I mean, so they're going to have to do something in terms of maybe free agency. I don't know. But I mean, if you win the Stanley Cup, I guess it doesn't really
Exactly.
matter.
That's what happens when you're good, is you can afford to trade picks and you can afford to trade young guys to secure your winning team, which is what they've done. Unless you're Ken Holland, and then you trade your young guys and picks to try to keep your death grip on the fucking playoffs. And then you put yourself in a really shit situation. But the way Vegas is doing it now, they're set to where they can make those moves because they're winning.
It's the modern approach that you now have to take with the cap situation.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what Yzerman hopes to do in the offseason, is take advantage of the cap situation. But what I kind of want to launch into tonight, which is our main thing, we're going to get in. Actually, you know what? Before I do, because it is going to be a rather long segment, our mailbag, we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors before we come back for listener questions. We have quite a few of them from Twitter and one from Facebook. So we will be right back in just a minute. Light the lamp during the hockey playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can make a $5 bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. You can always take the underdog, so like the Florida Panthers and the Seattle Kraken, to win tonight to make some bonus money. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with code THPN. New customers can make a $5 hockey playoff bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. And we are back, and we have a mailbag. So I did a call for questions earlier.
So enthusiastic, and we're
back. We're all tired, guys. Like, except for maybe Tyler. We have kids, so we're tired, and it's hot outside. And I'm pretty sure when you have kids, every day you spend outside, and that's basically what it's been. I painted a fucking door. I painted my front door. It required 2 coats of primer. I did 2 coats of paint, and it needs another coat of paint.
What color was it, and what are you going to?
It was red. Okay. It is going to green, dark green. So I needed to do primer to block the red and green. But now I need to do 3 coats of the green so there's no streaks. And each coat takes 4 hours to dry. So I need another coat of green on my door. And I was out in 87-degree weather painting a fucking door. And it's hot and miserable. And yes, I am tired. But we have mailbag questions. And I put a call out earlier and we got questions from people. They're really good. And I like them. So we're going to answer them because we're nice like that. And that's the point of this fucking episode. So we're going to start... just slightly, with Robert Smith at R1Smith1602 on Twitter.
Not the running back, right?
No, maybe. I don't think so. I didn't know there was a running back named Robert Smith. But would the Wings...
He was a Buckeye, played for Minnesota forever.
Oh, boy.
Oh, then we don't care. Guess we don't care. Would the Wings consider trading both firsts in 2024 to get a pick in the top 15 in this year's draft? And I'm going to say no. I would say no. I think they're going to use one, if not both of those picks to pick up players, not other draft picks. So we've got number 9, we've got number 17. We may be able to move up from 17 a little higher with adding seconds or with adding picks from next season. But I don't think you're going to trade both those firsts to move up. But if you do trade those firsts, I think you're going to use them in a deal for a William Nylander, for someone we're going to talk about in a little bit, Clayton Keller. There are going to be picks there, I think, that will get traded, but I don't think it's going to be to move up in this draft. I don't see a reason to.
No, and I'm going to piggyback on one of those picks in particular, the Boston pick. Now, I know I think I've said it week over week because it still bothers me how well Boston ended up doing this year. But that's a top 10 protected pick in 24. If somehow Boston shits the bed next season, not saying they will, never know what could happen depending on what they lose or who they lose and so on and so forth.
Half their team could get the plague. We don't know what's going to happen.
Sure. But if that's a top 10 pick, it shifts to 2025 and is completely unprotected. I think that could be a valuable tool for Yzerman to utilize to go after whoever on whatever team. He's made it clear that he's not to the point of wanting to trade for firsts, But of all the ones I think you float out there, it has to be that one. Because if you've got a team getting an unprotected 2025 pick as like your best case scenario, if Boston completely just collapses in the next year, that easily gets you a Nylander. That easily gets you any player you pretty much can think of.
Does it help you get a Mitch Marner?
Possibly. I think you're going to need several more in the player, but the potential is there because that could become a very valuable pick. And if anything, you could still end up getting a 11 through 20 pick at that scenario if we're looking at next season alone. So the answer to the question, though, no, I don't see them making a move for top 15. I think it makes more sense to get a now like impact type player. Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it because I think Yzerman puts a lot of stock into this draft, especially if you can get in the top 5. But my thing is, I don't think you're getting in the top 5 with 2 of those picks. I think this draft is just so deep and so coveted that I don't think you're getting in the top 5, even if you give up these 2 first-round picks and maybe even a second-round pick. I still don't think that gets you up in the top 5. But I don't think the Wings are really in the position to have to do this. I think at this point, maybe you're in the position to trade these picks away, or at least one of them for a player, ex-player. I don't know, Marner, Nylander, Keller, someone like that. I don't know, Tom Wilson maybe. I know
he's using a first on Tom Wilson. I'm going to be pretty pissed off. Not gonna lie. Maybe a couple years ago, I would say I could give you that argument, but if maybe not Detroit.
Yeah.
But at this point,
how old is he? Was he 29 still, or is he 30 yet?
Last I checked, I thought it was 28, but I think you could get Tom Wilson for a second.
Tom Wilson is 29.
Doesn't really look like Washington's really trying to rebuild. I guess they're trying to retool.
I don't think anyone knows what they're doing.
Trading Wilson would be the move. But anyways, I would be fine if they...
Didn't they just hire a new coach? Or
they did.
No, Nashville did. Did they both?
No, Washington did too. Yeah, an assistant from Toronto.
That's right.
But anyways, yeah, no, I mean, I don't see them making the pick, or I don't see them trading the 2 picks away to move up.
Great, we're all on the same page. We're not going to trade picks to move up, but we will trade picks. I mean, we have to trade picks to get another player. It's inevitable.
Next year's, let's clarify, the 2024 picks.
Next year's picks. Well, we'll probably also trade one of the second round picks from this year because I don't think they're going to take 3 picks in a row. No. They could, but I don't think they're going to. Next question comes from Marcus at MarcusBrint21 on Twitter. Who's a better fit for the Red Wings if they somehow move up? Fantilli or Carlson? And this is just, I guess, a dream question because it's not happening, guys. I love that there are people that like another one. Dave, at FCR Dave on Twitter says, "What are the chances the Wings can move up to number 2 or 3 in the draft?" 0%, absolutely 0. I think when we looked at it, one of the previous episodes at the draft list and who's picking where, the highest we may be able to trade up to is like 6. But at that point, I don't think it's necessary. Unless someone like Fantilli or Carlson miraculously drops. I'm not even trying to trade up to 6 for like Will Smith because he might be there at 6. But I'm not going to try and move up because the cost and the gap between like a Will Smith and a Ryan Leonard or a Will Smith and an Oliver Moore might not be that huge to where it's probably not going to matter down the road. So it's not going to have... Who would I take? I mean, I think Fantilli is probably the most NHL ready player right now. Carlson not far behind, though Carlson has spent his time on larger ice internationally, playing in the SHL, where Fantilli has the American game under his belt. I just think that's... Advantage. And I don't think there's that much of a size advantage, though. Because I think Carlson's like 6'3", 198.
Is he that
somewhere
big?
Around there?
Am I thinking of?
I don't know. But I think that if you were to get there, and if this was Steve Yzerman, wet dreamland, Fantilli is your pick in that spot. I just can't.
Oh, he is 6'3", 194. I take it back.
I think Fantilli might have been the only one that could have challenged Connor Bedard for that number 1 spot, simply because of his NHL readiness and just his completeness of game in that respect. But if you were to move up,
Carlson's actually bigger than Fantilli.
Is he?
per EP anyways. He's got him by a pound or 7 pounds and 1 inch.
Okay. I mean, the 7 pounds isn't that big of a deal, and neither is really the inch in height. So they're about the same size. But I mean, I'm still taking Fantilli.
Must have been thinking of a Lucas Raymond type or something with Carlson there.
Yeah, I would obviously take Fantilli too.
I'd go either route. I like Fantilli. I think maybe because that's just the bias from being able to actually see him more being at U of M and local. But I mean, you look at him in the Worlds, especially recently, you could argue they both had a good Worlds, but Fantilli did not look out of place. I thought he had a great tournament. Again, this probably the US-Canada bias coming out of me on this one, but it's hard to say no to a Swede. If you're a skilled Swede, you love it. But I've liked Fantilli for a long time. I was really hoping that Detroit could at least get to 2 and or 3 in this for the lottery, and that would have been he'd been a perfect fit. He goes right into your top 9s as your center in the center core, and you're not losing anything. And he's a true center. I know. Is Carlson kind of in between? I guess what's his primary role right now?
Carlson's a hybrid, but I think Carlson might be a winger in the NHL.
So again, that speaks to Detroit needs guys up the middle still, high end guys up the middle, and Fantilli has shown that he can do that. And he had some goals and plays in the Worlds recently that show that he is ready to do that in the potential NHL level. Now, things could change, but long story short, I would probably go Fantilli.
The next question comes from Adam Kerr at AdamKerr05 on Twitter. Should the Wings bring back Luke Glendening on like a league minimum deal? So Luke Glendening is 34. And best known for faceoffs and his grit. And no, they should not. I would like to be able to bring guys in. I would like to be able to inject talent into this roster. I think bringing in a bottom 6 faceoff specialist, not really what we need to be doing right now. Luke Glendening, like I said, 34. I'm not sure he's at the point where he needs to just keep taking league minimum deals either. I think he could go sign for 2 years somewhere for $1.5 million. Sure. But I don't think you need to be going out and just trying to bring guys back in. To me, that doesn't really make sense unless you're trying to round out a roster. And right now we're trying to beef up our roster. We're trying to get into the playoffs. We're not trying to contend for a cup with a team we know is perfect and great and missing 2 pieces. We're missing more than that. So I think if we were further along, maybe a Luke Glendening type deal might make sense. But right now, it would be a feel-good story for people more than making a lot of roster sense or development sense for this team.
My wife would be happy.
That's what I'm saying,
That's
Ryan.
for reasons
it would be a feel-good
than hockey. But I mean, I don't think as neat as it would be, I don't see it working or being appropriate because you've got a Joe Valino in that 4th line center role and or Michael Rasmussen, who we forget that Moose was, when he went out, that kind of, I feel like, impacted the team more than we probably would have expected. And Moose is a guy that can really play on any line and not be negatively impacted. You put a Luke Glendening on your top 6 at any point, and you're likely going to be negatively impacted. And he's going to be a great forechecker, but does he have that same speed that he had before? Is he going to be able to be as aggressive? What were his face-off numbers this year? Does anyone have a hockey reference?
I don't, but I can look if you keep talking.
I'm going to keep talking, but I mean, if you compare his face-off numbers to the team, he probably still blows everybody away. And this year they were at 59%. So
yeah,
I think he still would have blown away the entire Red Wings roster. I think Larkin might have been probably the closest. Let's see. Face-off percentage.
Dylan Larkin's face-off percentage this season was 54.4.
Next closest was Raz, who missed a lot of the year. Kopp had the next highest amount at 49.8%. So Glendening again would have led this team.
I'm sorry, Ryan. Wait. Taro Hirose took 1 face-off and won it. So 100% face-off for Taro Hirose.
Doesn't count. Get out of here with that.
No, I mean, I will say since going to Dallas, Glendening looks like he's been relied on far less than what he was at Detroit in terms of taking faceoffs. At least going into the last couple of years, but still, he crushed it at 59%. He hasn't been below his lowest total. You've got to go back to 2016, 17. Nope, I take that back. His second year in the league in 14-15, where he was at a 51. First year in the league was a 48.5. I take it back. Sorry. I'm jumping all over the place here. I'm trying to look back. So when he was 24 years old was his worst year. You got to go back a long way for him being anything below 51% or less. So would he be that'd be really all you're getting him for is a faceoff draw at this point. Not saying that he couldn't handle his own, but I don't know. I think you've got guys in the system that you're trying to make into that role or have in that role now at this point. Now, are they as good as face-off? No, but they do everything else that he was doing and probably a little bit better at this point. So
it's a big no for Ryan.
Yeah, it's a big no for me. I like Glendening as a player. I think he left at 32 years old. Would you say he's 34 now? So or maybe he left at 31. But even then, no. We don't need to bring back the band. We don't need to bring back anything. This is just do what you're doing. Stay the course. You don't need to go signing players just because we don't need the Valtteri Filppulas of the world or the Luke Glendenings of the world. They were good. They served their purpose while they were in Detroit. It's time to move on and bring in new players.
I think we can then answer Ronald Levesque's question at the same time. He thinks the Red Wings should bring back Tatar or Nyquist. No, there's no reason. I don't get the obsession with going back to the well. Let's go back to players that have been here before and then just, I guess, try to make the team great using players that we've had previously because the names are familiar, which to me, it doesn't make sense because they're not making your team better. The experiment was tried, it didn't work.
If Tatar was 26 years old and just came off the greatest season of his career with 40 goals or something, it was a UFA, then okay, I could see it.
Sure, same with Nyquist.
30 now?
Older.
Older.
Tatar will be 33 in December.
Holy crap, that makes me feel old.
So it's I don't need to do it. There's no point.
To Tatar's credit, he's still managed to be fairly consistent in terms of his point production. He's still had a 20-goal season this year. Other than Lockett last year, things didn't seem to click in New Jersey. But I mean, he's in a role-playing position, but it's really not much different than when he left Detroit, where he was actually heavily relied upon. Now, in 1920 in Montreal, he had 61 points in 68 games, but that's the closest he's come to extreme output. So to think that could happen, or a 20-30 season here in Detroit, I don't know. And Goose, his injuries scare me at this point. I'd be afraid to kind of go that route and try to bring him on.
Yeah, I agree. I don't need it. We don't need it. Let's stop. We're not doing that anymore.
Are there any former Red Wings that you would bring back?
Oh, Tyler.
I'm being honest. Is there anybody in the NHL that formerly was drafted or played for the Red Wings that you would bring back?
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah, this is not a great spring on this question right now kind of question.
What about you, Tyler? Do you have someone that's on the top of your mind right now?
Maybe Callie Yarncroc?
Yeah, Yarncroc is who I was thinking of. Janmark. But
not even Janmark anymore.
Yeah, maybe that's more of a couple years ago. I don't know. Maybe Bertuzzi, depending on the situation and what the contract is.
I just don't know what the contract would be there. I mean, I want to move to Lars's question first before we get to it. Lars, our buddy Lars at Lars Thorsel on Twitter, who also has the Swedish Winger podcast. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. It's got a lot of really good content because he is in Sweden. So he gets firsthand look at all these guys that are over there. So he has the direct line right to the Swedish prospects. But he asks, which draft ranking do you trust the most? It's great that they aren't so dissimilar, right? And then he asks, Sandin Pelika with the 9th pick, yes or no? So my answer to that is I have really McKeen's has done well for me. I think that McKeen's out of the past few years, have been pretty spot on. McKeen's put out their final ranking. Right now, their top 10 are Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson, Smith, Michkov, Benson, Dvorsky, Leonard, Simashev, and Wood. That's kind of high for Matt Wood, I think, and high for Simashev as well. I would not be taking the left-handed defenseman at number 9. But as far as them not being dissimilar, I think there are a few people that are all over. So Bob McKenzie has some that are kind of weird and out of place. Craig Button must do a really long bong rip before doing his final list, because some of his, to me, were absolutely insane. I mean,
think it might be lines of something, but
he has Axel Sandin Pellikka at number 5. And that to me is high. I think he could go, I wouldn't mind him at 9. So that's the second part of that question. At 9, I wouldn't mind him. We had talked to Tony. People are kind of just drooling over Reinbacher as the top pick. And I had said maybe the same thing, the top defensive pick. And Tony had even said that Axel Sandin Pellikka could be a better defenseman. And I watched more video. I fully agree. He's very mobile. Again, if you want to compare people to Seider, because that's going to be the hot new thing, is comparing people to Mo Seider, which is great. But I think that he's a right shot. So I think that might be the move there. If they were to take a defenseman, they would stay in Sweden with that pick. They could let him develop over there. He is 5'11", 181 pounds. And he just took the tournament by storm when he was at the juniors, and it was great. And I don't see why, if they were to go defense, they wouldn't have him high on their board. So at 9, I think that the importance is still going to be put on offense, depending on who's there, and we probably won't have to worry about that too much. But if he does slip to that 17 range, which he probably won't, but if he does, that would be my absolute steal of a pick there.
I guess the big thing you got to think about, I mean, he checks all the boxes in Pellikka of high threat offensive defenseman. I mean, I'm not trying to make the comparison to Brian Rafalski, but the way he kind of moves with the puck and takes his shots, that kind of what it reminds you of. But he blows them away when it comes to his skating ability. And you look at the trend of where Detroit's gone, they're looking for mobile defensemen. The only downfall is that he's not as big as half the guys that they've drafted over the last several years. So, I mean, you can pick at it all you want, but is that where it maybe takes away from him? Or do you go for that player that has what seems to be an incredibly high offensive IQ and go for it? I don't think it'd be a stretch at 9 to pull him in at that point, but I have to agree with you in that sense, Greg, that they need offensive talent. And if some of these forwards are there, especially at center, I think you got to make that move. But so to answer this simply for Lars, yes, I would take him, but there's a lot of options there, and it makes it kind of a wash in some sense. I guess it just depends on who your gut feels is for that day in particular. But
yeah, I mean, like we had mentioned before, if you look back to the way the draft went last season, and where people were just picking all willy-nilly off the board after pick like 4, people were just picking random players that people had to go 2 pages into their draft report to try to find the player's name to get a scouting on them. It could happen again. I mean, it absolutely could happen that we're sitting there at 9 and no one has taken Matvei Michkov because of the Russia issue. And at that point, you've got to run to the podium and take them. There could be a point, I mean, crazy, but if Will Smith is there at 9, you're taking that pick. It's so much weird shit can happen, where I think if there is an offensive player there, and there should be an Oliver Moore, there should be a Ryan Leonard. I think that's got to be your pick, simply because of our pipeline and the depth of kind of high scoring, high offensive forwards we have is very shallow. Granted, it is also shallow on the right side, and Sandin Pellikka could be a really good pick there. I just think that we need to kind of prioritize offense here, and then maybe pick a defenseman with number 17.
Yeah, I agree. I think to take another defenseman. I mean, if he's there and he's your best player available, I think the Wings are still in the position that you take your best player available. However, in this case, I do think that if there's a center available, whether it be Dvorsky or it be, a guy like Oliver Moore or someone like that's available, I think I take the center over the defenseman, just because I think at this point you need some production from the front, from the center position. I think they need some production from there, especially young production going forward. Because, I mean, then up the middle, you'd have Oliver Moore, you'd have Larkin, and then you'd have Marco Kasper. I mean, that's a pretty good top three, assuming Kasper and Moore or whoever it is pans out. So, I mean, if he's there and you think he's your best player available, then you take him. But if you think you need to take someone because they're a center or you need some more production, up front, then I take a forward.
Good answer, Tyler. Solid answer. We're going to move on to our question from our buddy Mo over on Discord. Do you guys think Detroit will trade for Clayton Keller or Martin Necas? And I think I like the name Clayton Keller. Everyone likes the name Clayton Keller, especially after his dad tweeted that my son will never play for your team again. Like his dad pulled a Karen and went to the manager, basically. And Clayton Keller, 24 years old, currently has a cap hit of $7.15 million, signed through the 27-28 season. Young, really promising winger. This season, he in 82 games played, he had 37 goals and 49 assists. Clayton Keller was shooting at a 16.6 shooting percentage, which to me is kind of unsustainable. Though last season, he shot at a 15.8 for the entire season. So he has that going for him. With the Arizona, yeah, I think that's the big disclaimer. With the Arizona Coyotes, a bad team, he is performing very, very well. Plays over 20 minutes a night. His J-Fresh card, he has a 92% WAR, 82% EV offense, low defense at 11%, low power play at 39%, but he's a 95 finishing. So when he's taking shots, as you saw by the shooting percentage, he's finishing them. Mm-hmm. And if you want a young first line winger that is just going to go out and score goals, and it's Arizona, so you could probably get him for cheap or cheaper, especially if he wants out. That's the big thing. Does he want out? Is he going to say, you guys can't get an arena. No one wants you in Arizona. I don't want to play in college again for 3,000 people every night. I want to go to a legitimate hockey city that has a team, is on the way up, is working to put work into their team to make them win, which Arizona clearly is not. Clayton Keller is a fantastic option. And I think if you could go out and trade that Boston first and a prospect and get Clayton Keller, go do it. Like today. Call him today and do it.
What if you could kill two birds with one stone, get Clayton
Nick
Keller
Schmaltz.
or Karel Vejmelka, the goalie?
I mean, maybe if Vejmelka wants to play a backup role, but he's shown that he can be good enough to be a starter.
Yeah, but him and Husso could battle it out, and at that point, then you're not giving Tristan Jarry a free agent contract as a backup goalie.
Oh no, Tyler, you missed last week's conversation of offer sheet to Jeremy Swayman.
Ooh,
yeah.
You want to really piss
I saw that smirk
off?
Do an offer sheet to Swayman because Boston doesn't have money to bring the band back, and they don't have money for Swayman.
Back. I guess it depends on where the cap goes and what happens with Bergeron and Krejci.
It's only going up $1 million, so.
But what happens with Bergeron and Krejci? Obviously, they got Pasternak locked up. What's going to happen with Marchand? Because I've seen some people say, I don't know about Marchand retiring, but would he want to play somewhere else? I don't know.
Yeah, but all those things you're saying, however, Tyler, is cap friendly is an off-season mode. Boston has $4.9 million in cap space.
Yeah, they're screwed.
Yeah, so
and
my
that's
offer,
not having. You got Trent Frederick as an RFA, Bergeron UFA, Bert Foligno, Garnet Hathaway, David Krejci, Thomas Nosek, all your free agents at forward. Your defense is set. You're good there. You got to worry about Connor Clifton and Dmitry Orlov, who I think are both going to probably walk. The rest of their starting group is set. You got to figure out your offense with $5 million.
Tyler, my offer sheet for Jeremy My offer sheet for Swayman was 3 years, $5 million. That's all Boston's cap. That's the whole thing.
What would they do?
They would take the first and the third and cry.
You don't think they would be able to maneuver it?
I mean, they can.
So here's
because
what you do.
How much over the cap can you go?
Trade wise, though, they could trade somebody.
They can, but
they could trade like a Brandon Carlo or something like that.
Tyler, do they take your first round pick and give up Swayman, or do they gut their team, re-sign Swayman, and get themselves into the lottery and push the pick, or make that pick like a 15 this year?
If I was Boston, here's what I would do, and this is just me. We've talked about this a little bit here in my apartment. If I was Boston, I would sell high at Allmark because there's no chance that he has the season he had this year next year. I would keep Swayman because he's younger and probably the goalie of the future. That's what I would do if I was Boston. But
I would absolutely offer sheet Swayman tomorrow. Not tomorrow, after the draft, because you have to give up. You have to give up your first round draft pick and third round draft pick if Boston accepts. So that's what I would do. I mean, if I was going to Arizona, though, I'd grab Clayton Keller in a heartbeat. That's a kid that absolutely would fit into this lineup. He'd be playing in a big hockey city. He'd be able to get that name recognition for himself because he ain't getting shit for name recognition in Arizona. And I think that'd be a fantastic addition.
Keller and Zadina, or give him the first in Zadina for Keller.
There you go. Martin Necas, on the other hand, he was drafted the same year as Michael Rasmussen. He went after Rasmussen. He's 24 as well. This season,
Rowan's wet dream right there.
In 82 games, has 28 goals and 43 assists. His shooting percentage this year was an 11.7. I would take Keller before Necas. I think Necas is a little bigger. Yeah, he's 6'2", 189, so he's a lot bigger. Yeah. But I think I'm still going Clayton Keller. I think Clayton Keller's got more offense in him than Martin.
We need a difference maker. And as does the Carolina Hurricanes, as you guys saw this year, they don't have that goal scorer.
Well, Svechnikov was out.
Yeah, but I still don't think he's the Pasternak, the Panarin, the Kucherov. I don't think he's that kind of player. I think he's a good player. Still young, so potentially does have that 23. Upside. But I don't. At this point, he's not that player, and they need that. The Hurricanes need that kind of player. We had kind of an argument. I don't know if it was you and I or if it was me and the guys here at the apartment, but we were talking about Sebastian Aho. Aho is a fantastic player. He's not a superstar, and that's where the Hurricanes kind of ran into a buzzsaw. The last couple of years, they ran into Tampa. The last couple of years, and then this year they ran into Florida, who had better players than they did.
I mean, they also had Svech on IR, Jake Gardner on IR. Casa on IR. Pacioretty went out right before the playoffs.
Yeah, but is Pacioretty even that kind of goal scorer? I'm not sure.
He's not that type of goal scorer, but he's that type of depth piece that you want for this that type of playoff run.
Patches is your great defensive center.
Mm-hmm.
I think what Carolina needs is like a Mitch Marner kind of player.
Sure, but if you look at their roster, and you're right, they don't have star power, and Necas is making $3 million next season, and then he's an ARB eligible RFA, and he's going to need a raise. Now, ARB eligible, he can say, "Hey, here's what I'm worth, and here are my comparables." I just think that if you're going between the two, you lock up Keller because he's already got a contract, like a big not big, good for his production, great for his production, and that contract will look good for years. But Marty Necas, you're going to have to pay going rate coming 2024-25, and I don't think you'd want to deal with that headache. And they're going to want probably more back for Necas than Arizona's going to want for Clayton Keller, especially if Clayton Keller's asking out. I think that's the big thing. So you've got to kind of feel out the emotions of both players and both teams to figure out where your deal's at. But all in all, I think Keller's the move there. That's what makes most sense.
And what's super interesting too, and I was curious about it. Clayton Keller seems to be one of the odds-on favorite to be that team's next captain. So that'll really cause a bit of a stir over there.
Next question's from Anthony Vincent at Anthony Vincent's 1. Oscar Fisker-Molgaard, would he be a good fit? So I watched some video on Oscar Fisker-Molgaard, and Tony had mentioned him. He's mocked in the second round. I don't see why not. Once you get past the first round, I mean, everything's pretty much a crapshoot there. Once you get past like pick 15, normally things are a crapshoot. But the second round in the 40s, from what I see, I have no issue with it. It's just what is Yzerman thinking at that point? If you're looking at the summary on him, an intelligent, intense, strong defensive forward, finds soft ice in the offensive zone, has an array of refined professional habits. His ceiling will be determined by how much his offensive tools can be developed. I mean, that's the same really for any guy you're picking in that range. Is you can see the tools there, but you've got to figure out what's their percentage that they can put that all together and get that on the ice and do it consistently.
Are we talking about? I missed the name.
Oscar Fisker Molgaard, one of the best names in the draft.
It is a fantastic name. No, I like him. It'd be interesting what could happen there. Where's he? I had it pulled up. I think I'm on the
He's mocked in the 40s.
40s, so he'd be probably one of those second round picks potentially. I wouldn't hate it. I mean, he's playing in a men's league, which is, again, huge. From what I've seen, the guy can skate. He is shifty on the ice. He's not tiny in terms of height. He's 6 foot, but he needs to bulk up a lot. So if you can get that to come along, get the muscle there after he's drafted, I mean, he'll be 19 come February. So there's still plenty of potential there for him to get that. I guess hopefully, does he go a year in the SHL, then make the leap over like we've seen in recent history? I mean, the guy can handle, when he's in tight, his stick handling is fantastic. Is it top level that you could compare to some of the guys we're seeing in the first round right now? Arguable, but again, he's playing in a men's league and he is not afraid to mix it up defensively. I thought he was a good back checker. There's a lot of things that you can watch him in the SHL ice and appreciate about what he provides and what he brings. And a lot of it seems like it would translate very easily into Newsy's system. So to me, if he's there and for one of your second round picks, I wouldn't be upset with it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know a whole lot about him just because he's more of a second rounder. But I do see that Elite Prospects has him ranked as the 24th skater in this draft. Craig Button has him at 40. So I guess there's kind of like a high and low kind of there. And then for the most part, he is kind of at the bottom of the first round. I don't see why he wouldn't be a good fit. Left shot center. Definitely has to bulk up, kind of like you said, only 163 pounds. So, but another Dane, though.
I think what you'd hope him to be, or hope him to develop as, is kind of a JJ Peterka. How JJ Peterka is doing for Buffalo right now, it's kind of the same. He's 5'11", 192. He was taken 34 overall by the Sabres. And that was, some rankings had JJ Peterka going in the mid-first round. Some had him falling to the third. They kind of picked him early in the second, and he's putting all his tools together, and he looks like he could be a top 6 player in the NHL. And that's kind of, I think, what you hope for someone like a Molgaard, is that he does take all those tools that looks like he has and kind of puts them forward and puts it all together. And then you really get a top player out of him eventually. But I think it'd be a little bit of a project. Yeah,
but I don't think it'd be a risky one, though. To me, based on what I've seen, I mean, the skill can be there. It's if he can bulk up with it, and then just that continued progression from what I saw. Like he can be a solid two-way forward, but with a goal scoring touch.
Yeah, you're not reaching if you take him. You're betting on a solid development track at that point. That he hits all the milestones. Next question is from Edvinson Hype Train at DRW Collector 53, one of our friends over on Twitter. What time will the Bertuzzi homecoming party be at Rowan's house when we re-sign him? It's not going to happen, guys. It's the whole going back to the well thing.
But it's
a very, very long shot, simply because of what the rumored ask was for him in a long-term, high-cost contract. That with his injury history, I don't feel the recency bias is going to say do it because of how he did in the playoffs and how he performed with Boston. And you got to realize that Boston was a much better team. I mean, a much deeper team. They had the scoring threats, they had the offensive threats there, and just it's not the same player in Detroit as it was in Boston. And again, if you would take a 3-year contract and say, I want 3 years, $6 million, fantastic. But if you're asking me to give you a 5-year, $7 million contract, a 7-year contract, I can't do it simply because we've seen what's happened.
Even 5 scares me, but I would be more willing for that than past it.
I just can't do it.
Tyler Bertuzzi feels to me like a guy that's going to get overpaid, like a Dave Bolin did, or like a Matt Bolesky did, or like one of those guys that like you've said it for a while, Greg, that his body is, I mean, he's had a lot of injuries to begin with, but he's the type of guy that's going to by 29, 30, maybe even 31 be like as if he's 35 in terms of his body because of how many injuries he's had. I just don't trust giving him a more than a 3-year deal. If he gets a 5-year deal, that's probably 5 times 5. I've heard some people say 7 times 7. I'm not giving him that.
No.
I'll be intrigued what the Twins have.
But I think we're all in the same boat. I can't do it. It's just, again, it's going back to the well, and we need to inject some high offense into this team, and I think that's the route that we're going to go. From Lucas Mountain at Lucas Mo on Twitter. There's like 7 S's in his username. So I had to
thought you had a small stroke right there when you were trying to say it.
No, but draft related, if Reinbacher slips to 9, do you take him or do you go with a goal scorer? I think if you're going between Reinbacher and a goal scorer, you go goal scorer. I think that's what it is, because I think we have established that Sandy Pelika has overtaken Reinbacher for the better defenseman. So
that's again, that could be semantics at that point, though.
I'm still going goal scorer, I think, though. I think if there's high offense available, you take it.
I could honestly go either way, because we can't have the expectation. I mean, your hope is that one of these guys picked at 9 is a year away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. About
whether it's somehow knocking on the door this season or they're 100% on this roster come next season, not this coming, the following. So do I think all the guys that we've talked about could be that? Sure. But they need goal scoring. I don't know. I wouldn't be upset about it. I'm going to put it that way and leave it at that.
I like the non-draft related question, though. Anyone else feel like Wallander will be packaged in a deal this offseason to get a top 6 goal scorer outside the prospects Yzerman won't trade? You'd think Wallander has the most value and would almost have to be included to get a deal done, especially with the abundance of left-handed defensemen. I prefer to package Booyam, but he doesn't have nearly as much value. I'd agree there. He doesn't. Wallander has been the one that Wallander has been the one I've been including in my draft packages because he has that, I think, higher ceiling than Johansson has. I almost think people are going to be asking for Edvinsson, but I would say that's probably a no-go at this point. And your next, I think, best defensive prospect would be William Wallander. And I think that's where you'd go. And you're right, we have an abundance of lefty that will not all make it into this team because there are only so many spots available. So I think if you're trading firsts, you're probably going to have to include a Wallander as a prospect in order to get a deal done for a scorer. And I think that's why it's fine if you
Reinbacher or Pelika be getting picked at 9. I mean, if they somehow survive past 12, I could see a trade up from Yzerman to go get them for the right right side. But
maybe, but I mean, if you're trading Wallander, you're only affecting the left side of the defense.
No, I get that, but we know that the right side is definitely a need right now. And if you can land one of those guys within the top 15, if you have to move up a couple spots like we saw him do for Kosa, why not?
It depends on what it costs at that point.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, what was it for Kosa? It wasn't anything crazy, was it?
No, it wasn't crazy. That's the thing.
It was that they swapped firsts and moved up with.
What do we trade? 3rd?
It's going to bug me now. I want to see it. Let's go to the trade history. Kosa was a first. So they moved up. They gave him. They swapped first with Dallas. They gave Dallas the 2nd round pick. That was the Rangers' original pick, so he didn't even get rid of that. And then he gave them Ottawa's 5th round pick, all for 2021.
Yeah, so not crazy. That's not crazy. I mean, we've got
He
3
didn't-
second-round
The
picks.
key to all of that is Yzerman didn't trade away any of the Red Wings native picks to get Kosa.
Yeah, the high picks. Didn't trade any of the higher
it was
picks.
A pick he got from Washington, a pick he got from the Rangers, and he got from Ottawa. Now, I think those were all from other trades as well, not from just specifically trading with those teams, but you see what my point is. He didn't trade away any of their positioning.
Tyler, you think Wallinder's gone?
I think there's a chance that Wallinder's gone. I guess it depends on what you're trading away and what you're getting back. I wouldn't trade Wallander if you're just trying to move up in the draft. I think where I would trade Wallander is if you're trying to get a Mitch Marner, you're trying to get a Clayton Keller or ex-player, a Quinn Hughes from Vancouver, something like that. I mean, I think that's when you see a William Wallander, added to a package to make a trade like that. I don't think you just move up, trying to move up in the draft. You're not putting them in that trade.
Yeah, you're only trading him for a high offensive goal scorer or a really good right defenseman. That's what you're trading.
Unless for some reason a team like Columbus or San Jose gets really stupid and says, you know what, give us your 2 first-round picks and William Wallander, and we'll let you in the top 5. Then maybe.
Jesus.
Even then, that's a whole lot to give up to just not.
I
even get
still
in the
wouldn't
top
do
3.
it.
Not to move it in the top 5. I can't.
No.
What about top 3?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
You would?
Because then you get Leo Carlsson.
Okay, these guys are going to be on your NHL roster. Yeah, then fair.
Yep. Yeah, I would give up both my first-round picks and a William Wallander for an Adam Fantilli or a Leo Carlsson.
Now,
absolutely.
What's the deal with Matvei Michkov? Is he just not coming to the NHL
Iron Curtain
for 3 years?
He's got a contract in the KHL. Now, that doesn't mean he can't defect. But you'd have to get his whole family.
They're really
over
defecting
here
anymore. I guess at this point it would be considered that.
Absolutely. Back to Soviet Russia, Ryan. But yeah,
we've already seen one of his family members already.
Your dad falls into a pond and he dies. Apparently, that's what happened to Matvei Michkov's dad. So that's the only
we're
one.
On that list.
That I'm pretty sure we've said it before, and I'm still alive. I don't see any drones outside my window. But
sorry, China has all my information anyways, so I'm sorry.
I think that if a Michkov is one that fell, if you're looking at pick number 7 and Michkov's still there, you're really trying to push to move up a couple spots to take him. Or if he's there,
even though he might not be in the NHL for 2 or 3 years, give or take.
Yep, because he's that dynamic of a player, I think, or he can be that dynamic of a player. I think that's what you do. I think you still have to move because you're trying to get the best offensive talent available, and that's the best offensive talent available. We're going to move to our last question. Is a Facebook question from Philip Barton. He says, hey guys, just wanted to say massive thanks first for the content and keeping me up to date with all the news. You're welcome. Thank you for listening. Question is, do you guys see the Red Wings making any trades up to move in the draft at all? And if who that might be? I've always wanted to ask if you guys had time also, if you had the chance to take either pair. Now, we answered the first part already. And
let's move it up. Yeah.
All right. But if you guys had the chance to take either pair, who would you take? Draisaitl and McDavid or Datsuk and Zetterberg? He says, thanks again. Much love for the pod from Scotland. And me and Ryan, I messaged this question, and Tyler, I'm sure you saw it. It's just like you look at it and there's variables.
Man.
There's variables. So
I'll tell you what, fuck you for the question. That's the first thing.
Is it prime Datsuk and Zetterberg now? Or is it prime McDavid and Draisaitl back then?
Wait,
what is it?
You mean when they're I think you're taking both prime. It's got to be both in their prime.
Which era? Today's NHL or Zetterberg and Datsuk's prime NHL?
I mean, I think you could argue that Zetterberg and Datsuk's prime NHL still easily translates to current.
It does, but I think the game is faster, and I think there's a higher skill level now.
But at their prime, you had 2 of the best two-way centers forwards in all of hockey. Between the two, they were the Euro Twins for a reason.
Not to mention, they were fast players too.
Yes, but Pavel Datsuk was possibly the best defensive center, one of the best defensive centers to ever play hockey.
And he was also one of the best centers in hockey for several years running.
Can I split my decision? Do I have to pick a pair?
I don't think you can.
Can I pick McDavid Datsuk? Like,
I mean,
can
that would be the obvious choice.
That's the obvious
But
choice.
it's hard to pick against McDavid because, without a question, to me, he is the best player since Gretzky.
Absolutely. There's no doubt.
And you could say, I mean, Datsuk got a later start.
It's so hard, right? Like, it's
I
one
would
that
take Datsuk over Draisaitl, to your point. And I think Zetterberg and Draisaitl, the edge in a way almost could go to Zetterberg because of the two-way game that he had. But Draisaitl puts to shame Zetterberg on the offensive side of the puck, even with the lack of defense. Like,
yeah, it's a severe lack of defense too.
This is
Leon Draisaitl's EV defense is a 7.
I think if you ask, that's bad. I think if you ask anyone that's a non-Wings fan, without hesitation, even without a recency bias and knowing what Zetterberg and Datsuk were, I think that without a question would probably be McDavid and Draisaitl. And I can't be upset about that because they're fucking good. And I'm almost understating it by that point. But so was Datsuk and Zetterberg. But they did it in different ways to be at that high elite level of hockey. Ugh.
Yeah, I think, like I said, fuck you for the question. No, all kidding aside. All kidding aside, I mean, like, Zetterberg and Datsuk compared to Draisaitl, I would say pretty well. Datsuk more so than Zetterberg, I would say. But I don't think either of which compare to McDavid. So I think that way you would have to take McDavid and Draisaitl, even without recency bias. McDavid and Draisaitl are just, especially McDavid. McDavid's like a Crosby, you know, he's like a Mario Lemieux, where he's just like, you know, that.
I like the Lemieux comparison better than a Crosby.
But the reason I say Crosby is he's that can't miss number 1 overall pick, the next one, that kind of thing. And so, like, we don't really have that. Like, Datsuk obviously was drafted where he was drafted, same with Zetterberg. But, like, even then, the play style on the ice is just different. Now, Datsuk is closer to McDavid, but I still don't think he's even close.
I was trying to find, it took me forever. Hockey Reference redid their player comparison stuff, and I was trying to pull it up to look at everybody, but it's taken me too long. So
I wonder who McDavid's comparison is. It's got to be like, I don't know, Gretzky maybe?
Oh, it's got to be. But what I was trying to do was look at stats through those years and see what Datsuk had, like, through that beautiful stretch compared to McDavid. Now, I know he didn't touch McDavid numbers, but he has been the
harder to score then.
I will tell you, basically,
it was harder to score then than it is now.
There.
If you're looking at historical player data, Pavel Datsuk's JFresh card, his WAR was a 99%. EV offensive 90, EV defensive 96, 99% on the power play, 95% finishing. It's a beautiful card to look at because I think hands down, Datsuk's going to be the better player than a Leon Draisaitl. Absolutely. If you take complete play into account, like I said, one of the best.
Yep.
And that's his 2015 card. So there's your like peak Pavel Datsuk. His 2015 card is at 99%.
2015, and he had 65 points in 63 games.
So he's over a point per game player at that point.
Yeah.
If you look at Henrik Zetterberg, and I guess what season do you want to see of Henrik Zetterberg? Because if you look at, let's see,
07-08.
07-08. So
that's
the
when JFresh starts, right?
2008 season, his projected WAR 100%. 95 offense, 97 defense, 99 finishing. Just all around beast player. So 2008 is your Henrik Zetterberg is peak player at 100% WAR. Your
and he won the Conn Smythe.
Yeah, your Datsuk in 2008's at a 99. So those, I mean, it's them playing together, but then also their individual talent. Where if you're telling me I'm getting both players, it's almost hard not to pick Zetterberg and Datsuk simply for how they play together and for just Datsuk as a player. But then again, like you said, Ryan, it's hard to pick against McDavid because the best player since Gretzky, and it's just we've got ourselves a conundrum. I guess that's what we'd say.
In a way, it comes down to, do you want to see the oh shit, what a goal moment? Or do you want to see, man, when he's on the ice, you know it, and he dominates at both ends? And you can now argue that McDavid is growing into that type of player while still putting up those points. Draisaitl, his controller dies as soon as they lose the puck half the time. But even at Datsuk's peak, that 07-08 season along with Zetterberg, he had 97 points. He never broke 100 points, which blows my fucking mind.
It's harder to score.
Yeah, it was.
It was hard,
but he still won in that 07-08 season. He won a Selke. He won the Lady B. So
also, not only was it harder to score rules wise, but it was also harder to score because I think the goalies were better too. And that's not to take away from what the goalies do now. But there was Martin Brodeur and Henrik Lundqvist and Jonathan Quick and Carey Price and all these great goaltenders that a lot of them will be in the Hall of Fame. Pecorine, yeah. Goalies. So, was it harder to score then? Yes. The goaltenders are also better, I feel like. So it's kind of feels like it's starting to get to a point. I don't know if it's quite there yet, to a point where it was like in the 90s where there was no, like, the goaltenders were either non-existent or just at a disadvantage.
Yeah, it's the skill of the forwards is outpacing, I think, the skill of a lot of the goaltenders. Which I
also think a lot of the rule changes and stuff have to do with the players being able to just kind of go to the net and not really be touched and all that shit. So
yeah. Well, Philip, thank you for the question. That's absolutely broken our brains.
Ultimate mindfuck.
Yeah, it's really hard for us. And like you said, Ryan, anyone outside of Detroit would absolutely just go, yeah, McDavid and Draisaitl. But then you got to sit there watching Zetterberg and Datsuk for all those years do what they did and go, I don't know, man. It's really, really tough. But again, Philip, thank you for listening. Thank you for the question from Scotland. Yeah. And I want to get your guys' final thoughts before we sign off. We're going to start with Tyler tonight since he's here and we might not see him for a few weeks. So
you'll see me next week. Just bank on that. Final thoughts. Well, the Stanley Cup the Stanley Cup Finals are set. I don't believe we did a prediction, but so I'll just do that here. I think the Panthers are going to win in 7. I think Matthew Tkachuk is going to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. But
over Bob?
If the Panthers win, it's Bob. Absolutely.
Not if Tkachuk puts the team on his back like he can.
You mean like Bob's done for 3 rounds?
Yeah, but I mean they kind of seem to not care about the other 3 rounds once the finals comes around. So if he
that's called shit voting.
15 points or something like that than the finals in 7 games, I think he'd probably get the Conn Smythe. But even though, regardless, I mean, Bob's played fantastic. Regardless of the situation, I want it to be a good series. I there's no other way. I mean, because these other series weren't great. I mean, just both 3-0. I know Rod Brindamore was talking about how his team didn't get swept even though they lost 4 games. I found that hilarious. But those are my final thoughts. Enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs, and before you know it, we'll be to the draft. And I have a countdown here for the college football season, and you know what? The college football season is not that far away from the hockey season. So before you know it, we'll be back on the ice again. And you can follow me on Twitter at SealDog91.
I'm torn because part of me wants Vegas to win it just to see people absolutely lose their fucking minds. They're like, oh, they got handed a cup. Well, no, George McPhee's a psychopath, and he rebuilt the roster pretty much in a matter of 6 years. But it would just be hilarious to me. And also the party in Vegas would be unhinged, which would be fantastic to see the videos of it. So just to know that they'll have probably Cirque du Soleil in their fucking parade would be hilarious to me. Plus, I also selfishly want to try to bug my buddy to get a certain Vegas player that's going to be at his bachelor party this summer to hopefully bring the cup to said bachelor party up in northern Michigan later this year. So if that happens, I'm going to be pushing hard for that. It's very unlikely, but it'd be sweet as shit anyways. But yeah, other than that, we're getting closer to the draft. hockey's season is finally coming to an end. It's a little bit bittersweet, but as Wings fans, you got to be getting excited because this is probably the biggest offseason we've had since 2013. After that fallout from the Chicago series, losing in Game 7, probably around that time frame. This is the biggest offseason because Holland
Probably
should have
09.
Well, I mean, in terms of when a lot of movement needed to take place to continue making this team better. So we'll see. But other than that, it was good. A lot of good conversation. Already around 33.
You can follow me online at Breaking the Wing. You can follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. I want to give a huge shout out to Retire My Number. If you go on to Twitter and go to at Retire My Number, he makes sweet banners, and he made us a really cool banner. And I would totally hold it up on the camera, except for it's behind me, and I have headphones that are connected to my mic. But he makes really cool banners. If you go to our Twitter page, you'll see a picture of it. I put a tweet out there that has it. He does a bunch of cool, like, kind of charity ones, too. He does, like, the Bob Probert ones. He's done ones for Bobby Ryan and just different charities. And a lot of the proceeds go towards the charity, which is really cool. But you can go check him out, order a banner. He does customs. It's really cool. We give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network at HockeyPodNet for supporting us and spreading our podcast around. Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you can get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. If you use the promo code GRINDLINE on Howie's Hockey Tape, you get 10% off. And on Bring Hockey Back, you get 12% off. Please check out our YouTube channel, sub to us, turn on those notifications. You'll get notified every time an episode or a special or whatever I post goes live, so you'll always be up to date. But that is going to do it for us tonight. Oh, yeah, you can check out our merch on redbubble.com by searching the Grind Line. But that's going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan and Tyler, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.